He is the NCAA Men's Basketball Tournament Committee Chair, and the Creighton University Director of Athletics, Bruce Rasmussen, is with us on Shootaround. And Bruce, with Selection Sunday just over a week away, how much of your field is set in terms of the actual teams right now?
None. We'll meet as a committee on Wednesday and take our initial ballot, and that will be of teams that we think are in no matter what happens. And some teams will have an automatic bid by that time, and they'll be in. They'll be the conference champions. But other teams will have an initial ballot on Wednesday, and we'll put some teams on in the field by Wednesday night.
If we take a look at the criteria that you guys are looking at this year with the addition of the quadrant system, how is this system improved and how does it judge each team fairly?
Well, first of all, there's no change in the way the committee is selecting or seeding teams this year. We're just being a little bit more transparent in the process. You know, people speak when they talk about the committee and the committee's decisions. A lot of times they speak in shorthand because they don't have enough time to explain the process. But we think that the quadrant system better communicates the thoughts and the discussion of the committee than it has in the past using RPI only.
You've talked often about the human element to this. So the teams that you are discussing, likely they're in the conversation to be in the field. So how much does watching them this time of year maybe make an even more impact?
Well, first of all, if we were going to go by metrics only, we wouldn't need a committee. And the committee, each member watches a large number of games during the year. It varies depending upon the committee member. I probably watch 4 to 6 games a day, starting in November and all the way through the conference tournaments. Others may not watch that much, but observation is a real critical part of the process. If we're not going to have observation and watch teams and look at specific things while we're watching games, then there's no need for a committee. We just have a metric system. We plug them in, we get our field, we put them in the right order. So observation, I think we have to balance the two. We have to have a good balance between observation of games and what the metrics tell us.
How much of a shift, for better or worse for a team, can happen during conference tournament time?
Well, it depends on the year. It depends on the field. I use the analogy of a track race where you've got a bunch of people on the track. They're running a mile race, and you run 4 laps. And at every point in the year, the committee tries to evaluate where the teams are at that point in the race. So we're coming down the stretch, and we've got a lot of teams that are bunched up, and so depending upon what happens with others, as you're coming down the stretch running, you're going to the tape, a one game, even though the committee evaluates every team based on their entire schedule, 30 or more games, as you're coming down the stretch, one game may make a significant difference in the finish of a team. It could be that a team's fading and there are other teams that pass them. Could be that a team's charging and they pass teams. And it could be the opposite. It could be that a team's fading but everybody else is and you hold your position. Or you're charging and other people are and you hold your position. So it's a race to the finish, and how you do is dictated by how a lot of other people do.
Obviously, it's a long and winding road to march, Bruce. So in this scenario here, I'll bring it up, in November, one team could be in quadrant 1, and in December that team could still be in the same quadrant. But by the time February rolls around, that team could have dropped significantly just by virtue of maybe its injuries, or all of a sudden they're out of the NCAA tournament picture potentially. But how do you judge their opponents? If their opponents were to beat them at a different stage of the season when they might have been at full strength or looked at differently in this system?
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and the metrics early, none of the metrics are accurate early. They're based on a very small picture, and so when you say a team was a top 25 team in November, that may not be a very good description of that team, because it's based on maybe what they had coming back, on a very small picture of how many games they played. So as the year goes on, the metrics are more accurate in terms of the description of a team. But you do see teams significantly change between November and March, either because of injuries or the development of players or chemistry or whatever. And so, but the committee's job is to say that every game has the same value. And we're not to be into predictions and say, boy, you got a lot better, so we're predicting that you're going to be here. We're determining a team's value based on every game they play being looked at with the same significance.
You are not allowed to be in the room for discussions about your university, Creighton. What about for other Big East teams?
I can be in the room on discussions of every Big East team except Creighton. However, the only communication I can make is to answer factual questions. So I can't give an opinion on a team or on players or on anything, but I could answer factual questions. I could say, for instance, that Phil Booth was not available for these specific games. I couldn't speak to how I think that impacted Villanova.
For those teams here in the final week of the season, up until Selection Sunday, that are sweating it out, if you're a team sitting in that position, as a committee chair, what would be your advice to that team if they could go back in the past, maybe improve their resume in some way, shape, or form?
Well, obviously, winning games is important. So, just win, baby. But if you could go back and say, what could you do differently? I'd say schedule good teams. A third of your schedule is non-conference. They're games that you choose to schedule, not games that you are forced to play. And so look at your non-conference schedule, and could you have scheduled differently? Could you have scheduled maybe better teams? How did you do on the road? How did you do away from home? How did you do against tournament caliber teams? Those are the discussions that the committee has in more detail, comparing when you get down to peeling the onion, and the difference between the 20th best team and the 60th best team really is paper thin. A lot of times it comes down to just a very few things, and the committee looks at who did you beat, and who did you play, where did you play them, how did you do, and wins away from home, because the tournament is played away from home. And how did you do against tournament caliber teams? When we're looking at teams and trying to determine who should be in and who maybe didn't do enough, we're looking at how did you do against other teams that are either going to be in the tournament or being considered to be in the tournament.
Is 68 teams enough?
It depends on which side of that. If your team is in, it probably is. If your team's not, it probably is not. But I've thought that in men's basketball, more than any other sport, there is such of a compression of teams. Again, the difference between the 20th best team and the 70th best team is paper thin. So it wouldn't bother me to go to 96 teams and give a few more teams a chance, because I don't think there's a big drop-off between, the 50th best team and the 80th best team. And so it wouldn't bother me at all to see the tournament expanded.
Raz, finally, before we let you go, 5 years into the reconfigured Big East, and Creighton has achieved much success. So from an athletic director perspective, how would you sum up these first 5 years?
Well, it's an awesome league. I think it's the best basketball league in the country because it's basketball-centric. We've got schools with like missions that are tremendous schools. Their focus is that we have students who are athletes, not athletes who we're trying to force to be students. The mission of the universities are great, but the basketball is as good as there is in the country. We couldn't be more pleased.
Bruce, get some rest if you can. I don't know what the sleep schedule looks like this upcoming week. I don't know if I want to know.
No, I have not gotten much sleep, but I'm getting used to it. And I don't think we'll get a lot of sleep this week.
There we go. Bruce Rasmussen, the men's basketball tournament committee chair, with us on Shootaround. Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.